So in this learning, we are continuing with equity valuation using free cash flow model, and definitely cash flows are going to grow, but eventually, not presently. So this is the situation when constant growth happens in a few years from now. So it starts from a period n, say n is 5 years. So it means constant growth would start after 5 years. So in year 5 and onwards, the constant growth would be there. So we are assuming this scenario, right? So constant growth is not happening right now, but in the future it would happen, or the expectation show that constant growth to cash flow would start from year 5 and continue onwards. So if this is the scenario, we will be calculating value of the firm in this scenario. So here we have a scenario where the company in the year 1 has negative cash flows, because it may be expansion year. So company has $20 million of outflow of cash as it may be expanding. In year 2, company starts making positive cash flows. It is $80 million. In year 3, cash flows increase by 25%, and then it is $100 million, and then they increase by 10%. They are $110 million in the 4th year. So initially company is having variable growth in cash flows. So first year it was minus, then they became positive, then they increased by 25%, then they increased by 10%. But expectations show that from year 5 onwards, company will start growing at 5% annually. So company eventually attains a constant growth rate of 5% from year 5 onwards. So if this is the situation, how we will calculate the value of firm, that is important thing. But the most important point here is that in these situations, it is a good idea to calculate the horizon value of the firm. And by horizon value, we mean that we should calculate the value of firm in the year 4th, because constant growth in cash flow start from year 5. So free cash flow to firm in year 5 would be discounted using the growth model, which is WACC. So in this case, we will be calculating horizon value of the firm in the year 4, and we have cash flows for the year 5, and we will be using the growth model, which involves cash flow being divided by WACC minus G. So in denominator, we will have WACC minus G, and this is the situation. Let us take step-by-step approach to solve this scenario for valuation of the firm. First step is that we should plot all the cash flows for year 1 minus 20, year 2 80, year 3 100, year 4 $110 million, and then from year 5 onwards, constant growth starts. So in year 5, the cash flows would be 110 times 1 plus growth rate, which is 5%. So it would be 110 million times 1.05, which gives us $115.50 million. Now, this is the first step. So first step is get to know the nth year, which is 5th year, when the constant growth to cash flows begin. So first of all, we should understand which is that year when the constant growth starts. And in this scenario, constant growth starts in year 5. So we will calculate the cash flows for that year. So once we have got that number, the second step is always to compute the horizon value at n minus 1th year. Right. So since cash flow of 5th year are known, please remember in this case, horizon value of the firm would be calculated for the year 4. So at the fourth year, what is the value of firm? That is what we are trying to calculate here. Cash flows of fifth year would be taken in the numerator, which is 115.5, and in denominator we will have WACC minus G. So WACC is 15% and growth rate is 5%. So when we do these numbers, we get this horizon value of 1155. What does it mean? It just means that value of firm in the year 4 is actually $1,155 million. This is what it means. And as a third step now, we will enter all these cash flows into the cash flow functions for all the years up to n-1 and compute the net present value. So let us do these numbers on calculator. But before getting into these numbers, please remember for the fourth year, our cash flows would be 110, which is the free cash flow of 110 plus the horizon value of $1,155 million. So cash flow of 110 plus $1,155 million worth of horizon value when added together comes out to be $1,265 million. So this is the cash flow that we will enter in the fourth year, because the fourth year has regular cash flows plus discounting of all the cash flows for year 5 onwards. So that is what it is. So let us enter these numbers and compute the net present value. To do these numbers, we will use our BA2 Plus calculator. Click CF and then second, clear work. Make sure everything in the memory of calculator is cleared. Second, quit and go back to CF function. It is asking for CF0, which is 0 and down arrow. So first cash flow is minus 20. So 20 plus minus, enter, down arrow, down arrow. Second cash flow is 80, 80, enter, down arrow, down arrow. Third cash flow is 100, enter, down arrow, down arrow. Fourth cash flow is, remember, 1265, enter, down arrow. We have entered all the 4 cash flows. Now we want to calculate the net present value. So we will hit NPV button, and it is asking for I, which is nothing else but WACC, weighted average cost of capital, and it is 15% in this scenario. 15, enter, down arrow. It is asking for NPV. Actually we are trying to calculate NPV, so we will hit the compute button, and net present value of this firm comes out to be $832.12 million. So this was very interesting scenario where we have negative cash flows initially, and then cash flows all of a sudden become positive, and then they grow at a higher rate of 25%, then they grow at 10%, and eventually a constant growth to cash flows is achieved from year 5 and onward. So in this case, it is always a good idea that when constant growth is eventually achieved in a later year, maybe year 5, then we calculate horizon value at year 4, and this horizon value is added to cash flow of the year 4, and all these numbers are entered into the BA2 Plus calculator in cash flow function, and value of a firm is computed. So this is the most shortcut method of calculating the value of firm using cash flow growth model, and it is actually a sort of adaptation of Gordon growth model which we adopted in a dividend discounting situation. In that situation, we were considering growth of dividends, right, in dividend growth model. This situation, in the present situation, we adapted the Gordon growth model to consider the growth in cash flows rather than dividends. So it is a quite amazing approach that can help us calculate the value of firm.